And now it's Paul Woodall, thank you. And we'll talk to us about environment compliance and the trade.
Yeah, thank you. Have you ever gotten this feeling in the morning and you wake up and say, that was a bad dream? I had that feeling this morning when I got here. And I handed in my USB. And it wasn't the right one. Thanks to help, we managed to recover a presentation which is not the final version, but it's close. And when you have these kind of nightmare experiences, the way I overcome them is to try and think of something that could have been even worse. Now, of course, I have a nice DFDS USB. I actually have a few of those in the office, and that's probably the reason why. I think, so what could be worse? Well, if my wife had a twin sister, and I made the same mistake, that would have been worse.
You have to make the choice.
So I was asked to talk a little bit about DFDS. What we have achieved, but I have actually added a little bit to it because I am concerned about environment, and when I talk about environment, I also talk about climate. And the two go together. So I'll spin a little bit on the environmental issues of our projects, and I'll actually come with some proposals in the end of maybe how we as an industry could do it maybe a little bit better in the future. And as I said, the slides, it's really for my own benefit, so I know what to talk about. It's not, I mean, if it were only for the slides, you could just read them. But I'm here, you have to listen to me and not see the slides. Just a little bit about the DFDS, for those of you who do not know. We are a North European shipping and logistics activity. We are active in 20 different countries, close to 7,000 people now, listed on the Copenhagen Stock Exchange. We have some quite impressive data on what we do per day. 65 departures per day, a lot of freight and a lot of passengers. I worked out how many Airbus 380s that actually is a day. You know, we'll be a mega airline if we did that kind of business in the airline industry, but we are not. We are, yes, very much inside the CK area, and therefore this legislation is important to the way we do our business. We are talking climate, CO2. We emit 1.3 million tons of CO2 per year, at least we did in 2015. I'm happy to say that's down 12.4% from the previous year. So we're doing a bit, but despite the fact that we operate 7 ports, I don't know how many hundred trucks, offices and whatnot, 96% of our emissions come from our ships. So that's why the ships is an important part when we think about what we do from an environmental perspective. Right, we have received some very nice money for a number of different projects, and I'm particularly pleased that Lord Prescott is here because that enables me to tell a little more detail about what we actually did. 2013 we had 2 projects, one covering the link between Gothenburg and Ghent, the other one covering the link between Gothenburg and Humber. So we're quite pleased with that. Some upgrades to our ships, mainly on the scrubber front. That's where we spend the majority of our money, but also in the ports to improve safety and to improve our environmental profile. In the 2014 call, we got money for 4 different projects. One covering the link between the Cuxhaven and the Humber. One covering the link between Rotterdam and the Humber. And one covering the link between Esbjerg in Denmark and the Humber. So I think we've done our bit for the Humber. we also had one project in the Baltics. So that's why I actually second Lord Prescott's idea from before lunch. I thought that was an excellent idea. So that's what we've done. All of these projects include scrubbers, and I guess that's what we are known for. We were one of the first movers to install a scrubber, and we are now one of the largest operators of ships with scrubbers on board. But just improving your ship, of course, is not enough to qualify for the EU funding. It's the link that is important. So in addition to the ship side of it, we have done a number of investments in the port infrastructure in both areas. One thing that I am missing in the program is that ships that are almost doing the same work as a bridge or a tunnel are not qualified as infrastructure. Tunnels are infrastructure, bridges are infrastructure. These ships are not, and that's perhaps a setback in the system, the way it operates today. So when we look at the projects that we have implemented and are implemented, what have we actually obtained? Well, certainly we have reduced our SOx emission. Not only down to the level of the new legislation, we are actually well below that. That, of course, is positive. We have, in addition to that, reduced about 80% of the particles when we're talking mass. That's kind of a bonus. That is part of the functionality of a scrubber. It takes away a lot of the particles. So that is pretty good. We have actually seen an increase in greenhouse gas emissions. That is not so good. And that's the general problem with the sulfur legislation, is that when we reduce sulfur in marine fuels, we increase the CO2. That's the way it happens. 95% of the tonnage that now complies with the new sulfur legislation has switched to gas oil, a distilled product, and that has created quite a lot of additional CO2. In 2020, the rest of the world, we think, at least the EU, but we also think the rest of the world will go to a 0.5% sulfur cap. That's also a distilled product. So for every distilled ton of oil, we have to consume additional from 2020, 350 kilos of CO2 will be generated. So that's about 70 million tons of CO2 generated to achieve the sulfur reduction. Now, it's 12,000 euro damage on the CO2, fair benefit for 1 ton of sulfur dioxide? I don't know. Somebody has to make that calculation, but that's approximately the situation that we have. And I know carbon has been mentioned a lot today, and I can only echo that because we are solving one problem, but we are probably increasing another problem. So greenhouse gas emissions is something that we have to be aware of. I'm personally, and the industry as such, were disappointed that the maritime industry was not part of the COP21. Of course we should have been in there with some kind of limitations, but it didn't happen. So now we have to do it on our own. And I think you will be finding that we'll be quite ambitious when we set our own targets on this. It's something that really has to be done. The funding that we thankfully have received from the EU has helped us to remain competitive. Been a lot of talk about modal shift. How much has happened? We don't know, because 2 years ago when we were looking at this, oil was at a different price than we have today. 2 years ago, the political situation in Northern Europe and perhaps with Russia and sanctions, but different from what we have today. So what element has affected modal shift or not? We don't really know. But the industry at that time was looking at a 3 billion euro additional fuel bill per year that somehow had to go onto ocean transportation. It didn't happen, and thankfully for that. But it's really something that there was a concern. There's been some talk about an ECA in the Mediterranean. It ain't gonna happen. 2020, it will happen for 80% of the Mediterranean. So nobody's going to force that before 2020, so we're going to have it anyhow. The important thing is here, can we really measure the benefits we get out of these investments? Our own as a company, that of society that helps us with these investments. Have we got a baseline? And often we don't. And that, of course, is a big setback when we kind of evaluate whether we're doing the right thing. Today, at least in the last call, this is how we price projects within the motorways of the sea. And if it's a works, we're looking at 30% of a budget, a study or pilot 50%, a cohesion country maybe up to 85% of some kind of a financial budget. But what we're talking about is environment, and money isn't environment. And that's what I think we have to try and change. Somehow put a figure on the environment. But you also have to understand real life. If you go into the boardroom and say, I have a fantastic thing we should invest in here, the payback is, internal rate of return is perhaps not so good, and the payback is somewhere into the next century. But it's fantastic on the environment. Will the board thumbs up, thumbs down? Or you go to the bank and say, Mr. Banker, I'd like to borrow $1 million. I can't pay you back, but it's good for the environment. Is it no problem? 1% is less in interest. That's not the way it works. So somehow we have to put money on environment if this has to work going forward. And that's something that I think that we should think about. That whenever there are public funds available, public funds that should support environmental decisions, we should work out a system whereby we put a figure on a ton of NOx, on a ton of particulate matter, on a ton of SOx. And whenever we apply for funding, not only do we have to put in a financial calculation, but we have to put in the pluses and minuses on the environmental impact, on all the elements of the environmental impact. And it's on that environmental impact, the calculation there, that we may or may not qualify for public funding. And only if we do it that way around will we get investments that are good for the environment. So that's my little suggestion on a thought process. So change the system so that we actually pay based on the environmental implications and not really based on the financial budget. Thank you.
Wow.